In the first letter to Timothy, the Apostle Paul lays out his instructions for worship, first addressing men, and then transitioning to how women should conduct themselves in the public assembly. Paul's guidance on women's modesty and demeanor offers powerful lessons, both for the early Christian community and for us today. In a world where fashion and identity often become intertwined in ways that may distract from spiritual purpose. In 1 Timothy 2 verse 8, Paul speaks about how men are to pray in public worship with holy hands lifted up, free of anger and dispute. But then, Paul turns his attention to the women, focusing not just on their prayers, but also on their outward appearance. Paul urges women to dress modestly, not with elaborate hairstyles, gold or pearls, but with good works that reflect their devotion to God. His words reflect the cultural context of the first century, where the new Roman woman of the time had begun to rebel against traditional values. In Roman society, women who embraced this new identity often wore more revealing togas, once associated with prostitutes, casting aside the modestola. Their hair, adorned with gold pins, tortoiseshell combs, and braided ribbons, reflected a spirit of rebellion and sexual freedom. Jewish and pagan authors of the time condemned these new fashions, associating them with promiscuity and defiance of family values. But sadly, some Christian women were influenced by these trends as well. Paul's message is clear. Godly women should not focus on drawing attention to themselves, but to God. In a culture where outward beauty often becomes a distraction, women are called to reflect Christ through their actions, not just their appearance. Paul's call for modesty wasn't about shunning beauty, but about avoiding extremes. In Song of Solomon, we see jewelry and beauty celebrated, but always within the context of love and respect. Paul is urging Christian women to balance their beauty with modesty and humility. Today, Paul's message remains relevant. In a world where fashion can sometimes become a source of pride or vanity, women are encouraged to focus not on the latest trends or how much attention they receive, but on their character, their actions, and their devotion to God. Paul reminds women that while outward beauty fades, the impact of good works lasts for eternity. Women who dedicate their lives to service, charity, and kindness leave a legacy far greater than any fashion statement. Paul also speaks against the elaborate hairstyles that were popular among Roman women. The intricate braids, adorned with gold and precious stones, were designed to draw attention, not to God, but to themselves. Paul's words were not only about modesty in appearance, but also modesty in heart. True beauty is found not in the mirror, but in the heart that seeks God above all else. Women are called to adorn themselves with good works, humility, and kindness, virtues that reflect Christ's character. In today's world, where social media and fashion trends can lead to self-obsession, Paul's message calls women to take the focus off themselves and put it back on God. Women are encouraged to reflect Christ in their actions, their words, and their attitudes. The sparkling beauty of elaborate hairstyles and jewelry in candlelit worship services distracted believers from focusing on God. Paul's message resonates today in an age where distractions are everywhere. God calls us to set our hearts and minds on things above. Paul's teaching is about more than modesty. It's about where you place your value. Is it in your appearance or in your relationship with God? Today, women are encouraged to adorn themselves with Christ, prioritizing their faith over fleeting trends. Paul's words to the women in Ephesus challenge us today to remember that beauty is fleeting, but the impact of a godly woman is eternal. Through service, love, and humility, women can reflect the beauty of Christ to the world. Women today face immense pressure to conform to worldly standards of beauty and success. But Paul calls for a different kind of success, one built on faith, love, and good works. The world may admire outer beauty, but God values the beauty of a heart that seeks after Him. Paul encourages women to let their deeds speak louder than their fashion. When others look at you, what do they see first, your clothing or your character? Your greatest influence will come through your actions and the way you live out your faith. Today's culture places a tremendous emphasis on outward appearance. Social media bombards us with images of perfection, but Paul's teaching cuts through the noise. He reminds us that our value doesn't come from our appearance, but from our identity in Christ. With the rise of social media, the temptation to compare ourselves to others has intensified. But Paul's words encourage women to seek their worth in Christ, not in likes, followers, or trends. Your value comes from God, not from the world's ever-changing standards. Paul's teachings on modesty go beyond clothing. They address the deeper issue of the heart. He calls for a spirit of humility that reflects the love and grace of Christ, where inner beauty takes precedence over outward appearance. In a world that often celebrates pride and self-promotion, Paul calls women to embrace humility. The way we dress and present ourselves should reflect our desire to honor God, not ourselves. True beauty shines brightest when it is rooted in humility. In the Roman world, fashion was a sign of status and identity. But Paul taught that a woman's true identity is found in her faith and relationship with Christ. This truth applies today, where many find their worth in what they wear, rather than who they are in Christ. Fashion trends come and go, but your identity in Christ is eternal. Paul's words encourage women to anchor their sense of worth not in their clothing or appearance, but in their relationship with God. When you embrace your identity in Christ, you reflect His glory. Paul's call to women to dress modestly was not about restricting freedom, but about helping them focus on what truly matters, their relationship with God. Today, women are called to balance personal expression with modesty, using fashion to glorify God rather than themselves. Fashion can be an expression of creativity and personality, but Paul reminds us that it can also reflect our faith. What we wear should communicate our values, modesty, humility, and the desire to glorify God. Fashion isn't the problem, it's how we use it. Paul's words also challenge the world's obsession with wealth and status. In Roman times, wealth was often displayed through clothing and jewelry, just as it is today. But Paul urges women to shift their focus from materialism to spiritual richness. In a culture obsessed with wealth and status symbols, Paul's words remind us that true richness comes from a life lived for God. The beauty of a woman's spirit, her kindness, and her faith are far more valuable than any gold or jewels. Paul's message isn't about denying beauty, but about understanding where true beauty comes from. Outward beauty fades, but a woman's good works, her love, and her faith endure forever. These are the things that truly adorn a godly woman. Paul's message to women is clear. Your beauty doesn't come from what you wear, but from who you are in Christ. A life filled with good works, faith, and love reflects a beauty that far surpasses anything outward. This is the beauty that lasts forever. Paul's message to the women in Ephesus and to women today is a reminder that what we wear matters less than how we live. Modesty, humility, and a heart dedicated to God are what truly matter. Let your life be a reflection of Christ, not the world. Ultimately, Paul's message is about more than just fashion. It's about living a life that reflects Christ. Whether through your clothing, your actions, or your words, everything you do should point to God. When you live for Him, your beauty shines from within. In the end, Paul's words are a call to all women to remember that beauty fades, but the character and faith we cultivate in Christ last forever. Today's culture may push us to focus on our outward appearance, but God's message is clear. True beauty comes from a heart fully devoted to Him.